What's up everybody? Today I'll be making a loadout video for gadgets trolling. I'll be showing you guys what I use when I control with my gadgets character. This is my loadout and this is kind of what I use. I'm going to respec my character. As you can see, I've already done that. And I'm going to go into the powers and I'm going to show you guys kind of what I use to troll. Now I start off with taser pull. And I go for fear gas because down here below is what I kind of grab. I gotta go for Gauss Grenade. Gauss Grenade is a debuff in controller stance, and I also use Defibrillator. This move is very useful. It's also very important. It's just as important as taser pull and the other move, Sticky Bomb up here. These are mandatory moves that you will always have, so there's never really an excuse to say you don't have them, because in order to get anything else, you gotta have those two moves. Now, those two moves are very important, but so is Defib. Now, the reason why it's good is because a reason why you need Defib is because it gives back power to the group members. The reason why you need this is because as a controller, you're kind of like the healer for the group, but not for health, but for power. And the reason why this is important is because you kind of keep the synergy of the group going. You kind of keep the tanks powered up so that they could keep tanking. You keep the DPSs going so that they could keep burning things down, and you keep the healers powered so that they could keep healing. Now, without giving power, you'll definitely be hindering the group. The group won't be able to get anywhere if there's no power, because it's very hard to get through a raid without power. It can be done, but it's very hard to do so. Just as hard as it would be if you didn't have a healer, basically. So you need to have this move on your loadout always, whether you're the main controller or the secondary controller. And that goes the same with Taser Pull and Sticky Bomb. Now, Sticky Bomb and Taser Pull are basically your power over time moves, and what they do is they provide power to the group and to everyone over time, basically. That's kind of the easiest way to explain it. But really what it is that you'll be giving out ticks of power to everyone in the group and keeping them kind of powered and keeping them afloat with a certain base set of amount of power. Now, usually the person who controls this move, who will always be doing this move, is the person with the higher Vite. But I'll get into that a little later. Just make sure you guys always have the move. Now, the thing is, I don't use Taser Pull because it does pull adds to you at times, and it could be a little tricky. It could put you in a little bit of a sticky situation. It also will cause problems between you and the tank by doing so. So I prefer Sticky Bomb because Sticky Bomb, it stuns the enemy, and it also kind of just kind of explodes them out there. So it keeps them away from you. It's long range, and you're pretty much fine with it. Now, if you guys don't know, the controller role is to basically give back power first, and then to control the crowd. Now, it's not that important to control the crowd as many people as they may think. If you feel that you're controlling and you have to really control the crowd and the mobs of enemies, then there's something wrong with the tank in the group, because usually the tank is the one that needs to keep the adds on top of him. Now, if he's dying very quickly, or if he's letting adds go astray too much, then there's a problem with him keeping aggro, which then in that case it would be helpful for the controller to basically keep the adds in certain areas and kind of mess with them and things like that. However, it's not your priority. It's a waste of power, and it ends up giving less power. You end up giving less power to the group, and it causes a lot of problems. So don't worry about the effects of your powers until you're a little more experienced with a lot more skill points. And when you're running with a good tank, it's not really needed. It's better that everyone has power than to waste your power on trying to control the adds around the raid or alert. So always focus on those two. So from there I get my defib, and I have my Gauss Grenade. A Gauss Grenade is another good move because it's a debuff, basically. What it does is it lowers your opponent's defense, whether it's in PvP or in a raid. It'll lower the bosses. Usually you'll throw this at the boss because it'll lower their defense, and it'll help your DPSs burn down the boss. So it's always good to have that. That's a good crowd control move to always have. But you use it sparingly. You don't really have to use it on lower level enemies because they're usually killed very quickly by the DPSs. So we'll pretty much move on from there. That's pretty much what I get from the traps tree. I get the taser pull, the fear gas, the Gauss grenade, and the defib. Pretty much what I also do is I use the fear gas. Is really great for crowd control. Another thing I prefer to use is distract. What it does is it kind of keeps you out of the enemy's kind of like line of sight. If you're aggroed for any reason because you are doing too much crowd control or anything like that, that causes immunities to the enemies and the tank can't pull them or pull their aggro back, then you can use this to kind of like get yourself kind of away from the enemy, because what it does is it makes the enemy lose their lock onto you and you won't get affected by damage for a very short period of time. So it'll also kind of dump the aggro onto anything else, usually the healer before the tank if they're healing constantly. So what I like to use after I get Distract is Intimidation, and then I get Vortex Cannon and Napalm Grenade. Vortex Cannon provides a damage debuff, which will lower the attack of the enemy's attack. But I also use this to kind of push adds away from me, just in case if the tank is kind of not doing so well at the moment. If there's too many adds around, what I'll do is I'll kind of pop this real quick to push them away from me, or push them away from a healer or so, to kind of save the group a little bit. And it's very useful to use, but I don't use it often. I also get a Napalm Grenade for a healing debuff. However, it's not really useful. There's very little times where you'll have to use a healing debuff, but it's good to have one. If you're doing in a lot of PvP, this is where this is probably one of your strongest moves, is Napalm Grenade on healers, because you'll need to debuff the healer to keep them from healing, and this is where you really need it. So that's pretty much kind of it in terms of getting everything from the trees. However, you can get another move. You can get Stasis Field. However, I don't like Stasis Field because it's a defense debuff, which is the same thing that Gauss Grenade does. However, what this does is it encases them in a bubble, and by doing so, you kind of cause the tank to lose his aggro when you encase enemies. So it's not a good idea to kind of just go around and just smack this onto everything you come across, because basically what it ends up doing is just hurting the tank's ability to tank. So it's not very useful. If you cause immunities on the enemies, what they'll end up doing is breaking out and kind of going astray and kind of ignoring the tank, hitting the healers and hitting the trollers, which is you, of course. So you don't really want to use it too often, pretty much. If you do end up using it, but I would prefer not to use it. And if you do use this on a boss, it doesn't really do as much damage as like Gauss Grenade, because Gauss Grenade, you kind of like, I wouldn't say spam it, but it does a little more damage. So you can't really encase the bosses as well. You can't really stun the bosses either with Gauss Grenade, but still it's a little better. So I do have 6 points left over, 5 if you end up getting Stasis Field. And what I do is I go into the Iconics tree, and with the Iconics tree, I grab myself the Wisdom of Solomon, which gives me 50 vitalization and 100 power. So that's very useful to have. And I also get the Dominance, permanently gain 25 Dominance, which is very good to get. And from there you can kind of get anything else, but another good thing is, since I said I don't get a supercharge, is you'll want to get yourself a Word of Power. It restores power to 7 people in the group. So it's very good, very useful to do when there's an enemy around, or so you could stun them, or you could kind of just throw out a little bit of heals here and there, but it's not really that useful. However, you will be using it a lot to restore a lot of power to the group. Because you're a troller, it's going to take that vitalization and put it to good use. And I don't really like any of the other supercharges for the gadgets themselves, because they have a robot which is a 35% supercharge, which provides power to the group. However, it's not as useful, it's not as constant or as strong as the other Word of Power. Also, you can clip Word of Power with defib. By casting Word of Power, you'll see yourself kind of jump in the air, and you hit this move as quick as possible, and boom, you just automatically restored power, and you're also getting the effects of Word of Power. So that's pretty much the loadout, and I'll show you guys pretty much what it ends up looking like on my tree here. So under my control loadout, I'll have Sticky Bomb, I'll have a Gauss Grenade, my defib. As I said, that was very important to have. I have my Word of Power, and I use myself, I like to use Fear Gas just in case to crowd control. That is my crowd control move. And I use Distract. Distract is a must because sometimes it just saves you. It's very easy to use to pick up somebody who went down and who's kind of like in the fray. You pop this real quick and you get close to them and you can pick them up without being disturbed. So, very good to have. So again, that would be Sticky Bomb, Gauss Grenade, Defib, Distract, Fear Gas, Word of Power, and you have all these others at your disposal if you want to mess around with. Taser Pull you can use at some point to pull an enemy if you need to, but then again, remember, your power over time will override the other controller's power over time, which is why only one person uses power over time. So that's pretty much my loadout, and from there I kind of switch around with the powers that I do have according to the raid if I have to use anything. But that's pretty much it. Just make sure you always have yourself a POT on your loadout, which would be Sticky Bomb or Taser Pull. Now you'll ask the other troller what their vite is and kind of determine who does what, and then whoever is the secondary controller, you only really just have to spam your debuffs, defib, I'm sorry, not debuffs, and your debuffs. So you'll be throwing your Gauss Grenade to lower their defense, and you could also put yourself in an attack debuff, but I really don't. I kind of just keep the crowd control Fear Gas, and I keep the enemies away or so, but all you need is a defense debuff for most raids, and that's all that's really needed. You don't need to spam it either. You just wait for the symbol to come out, and when it's gone, you throw it back up. So that's pretty much it. If you guys found this video helpful, let me know. Let me know what you guys like to do for gadgets, what you prefer, if you guys are experts on gadgets, or if you're new. I hope this helps you out, and thanks again. Use defibrillator. I also use defibrillator. Okay, let me restart that. With Word of Power, you'll also be needing, you'll be using this as a good way to restore power to the group, and it also uses, what should I say? I also grab Word of Power because Word of Power is a 50% supercharge, which restores group to the power. Wow.